Welcome back, class. Today we're going to do a broad strokes overview of the different types of abilities you'll find in the game of Universus. There are static abilities, enhance abilities, response abilities, and form abilities. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we're going to start with static abilities. These abilities do not have any sort of qualifier to them, such as enhance, response, or form. These abilities are considered always active. They do not necessarily activate, so it's not something that you can respond to as the ability activation itself. So with Karasu here, it says, after you deal damage with an attack, any player with 6 or more foundations destroys one foundation. This is not an ability that so much activates as it's always active as long as Karasu is in play. Which, if he's your character, he's always going to be in play. So it's not something that can be triggered. You don't trigger these abilities. They are simply there. They will simply always be. There's another type of static ability in the keyword section that are going to be printed here near the bottom. These will be color-coded blue to signify static abilities. But that is only for keyword abilities. Keyword abilities that you see in like the bottom parts here or in older cards, they'll probably be up here in the top of the text box. If the word is blue, that signifies a static keyword ability. Next up, we're going to talk about form abilities. These are noted with the word form in blue, similar to your static keyword abilities, but these will actually say form, and the word form will be in blue. Form abilities can only be played during your turn at any point which you could freely play a card from your hand. So if you could play a foundation from your hand into your card pool, playing a form, that's at the time when you could play a form ability. You just, instead of playing a card from your hand, you tell your opponent, I'm activating the form ability on my card. So for Shishi Wakamaru here, his form ability says you commit him and remove 1 momentum from the game. So you turn him sideways, and you take 1 of your momentum and remove it from the game. The next card you try to play this turn passes, no check necessary. Very strong form, by the way. But you could play this ability at any point during your turn if you're not already playing an attack and you're embroiled in the enhance step. But any time that you could freely play a card from your hand as a form is when you could activate a form ability. But there are special types of form abilities called first form abilities, as seen here on Beautiful Suzuki. These are tricky because they are you're only allowed to use 1 basically per turn, and it has to be the first form that you attempt to play after your draw step. So during your ready phase, you ready all of your committed cards. You may review a card during the review step, and then during the draw step, you draw up to your character's printed hand size. If you wish to use a first form ability, that has to be the first thing you do after you draw your cards during your draw step. Otherwise, if you were to say play an attack or a foundation, you've passed your option to use a first form, and you have to wait until your next turn in order to use a first form ability. So always make sure that if you have a form ability that it does not say first form, and if it does say first form, make sure that that is the first thing you're wanting to do at the beginning of your turn after you draw. You don't have to, but just know that that is the only time you are able to. Moving on, we have enhance abilities. These are noted with the word enhance in yellow, and also for keyword abilities that are enhances, you will see the keyword ability in yellow, and we'll go over keyword abilities in later videos. I'm going to have a video for each keyword ability to break them down even further. So these, obviously, are abilities that can only be used during the enhance step of an attack, where you and your rival, starting with the attacking player, will take turns playing enhance abilities. So something to note is most abilities that are enhances on foundations or assets will have a commit cost, so you'll have to turn the card sideways. Now, unless that card has abilities that are tenacious or playable while committed, you cannot play cards on abilities on committed cards. However, some cards do have abilities that do not require you to commit them, such as Interdimensional Plants here, that has an enhance. The cost is discard 1 momentum, so you don't have to commit it. Your attack gets +3 damage, gain 1 health. These abilities can be used any number of times per turn, so long as you have the required, you can meet the required cost. So let's say you have 3 momentum. You may use this ability 3 times during a turn. However, you can only use one copy of this enhance ability on this card per attack. So if you wanted to use this ability 3 times, you'd have to do it on 3 separate attacks. I hope that makes sense. So you can use them not only once per turn, but you can only use them once per attack. Some enhance abilities allow you to use that same ability more than once per enhance step, but they're generally relegated to one enhance ability, one copy of that on each copy of the card per enhance step. Obviously, if you have 2 interdimensional plants out, you can use one of this discard of 1 momentum ability on each one once per enhance step, but it's just on the individual card itself. You can only trigger it once per enhance step. And just like with forms, some enhance abilities are a first enhance. And as it says here, this is only playable as your first enhance during the enhance step. Now, what makes first enhance abilities on foundations tricky is it doesn't have to be the first enhance during the enhance step. So this is an ability you would only really want to use on your opponent's attack, removing this card from the game to reduce this attack's damage to 0. So you'd only want to use it on your rival's attack, but they obviously get the first enhance. Well, so long as this enhance is the first enhance you attempt to play during that enhance step, you can use it. So if you want to wait for your rival to maybe use some more enhances to buff their attack, give it more damage, more speed, what have you, you would have to continuously pass your enhance and not take an enhance action before you would use this enhance. It's a little tricky, a little complicated, but first enhance abilities are usually very well worth it. Excuse me. And finally, we have responsibilities. These responsibilities are noted with the word response in green, and if they are a keyword ability that is a response, they will also have the keyword ability in green somewhere in the text box, either at the top for older cards or at the bottom for newer cards. And we'll go over those when we go over the keyword abilities sections. Now, responsibilities, I like to think are the easiest abilities because they tell you when you're allowed to use them. For example, Fateful Meeting. It has a response to remove, and the cost is remove Fateful Meeting from the game. After you take damage from an unblocked attack, your rival loses 3 health. So you're only allowed to use this responsibility after you take damage from an unblocked attack. Simple. Now, what is tricky, and I'll try to break this down as simply as possible, but this is something I had trouble learning when I first started the game, because I came from a Yu-Gi-Oh background where we had the chain system, where one player would activate an effect, then someone would respond, adding that to the chain link, and then someone else would respond, adding that to the chain link, so on and so forth. You could miss your timings. The easiest way to explain response abilities in Universus is what I would call a window system, where an action is taken. Say a card is played as a form. Say one player plays an attack card. Let's say you're the turn player. You play an attack card. This opens up a response window where, starting with you, players would take turns activating responsibilities that would trigger when an attack is played. And if you pass, your rival gets a chance to play a response in order to maybe get rid of your attack or reduce its stats. So if they pass, then that window closes, you continue. So, it's kind of tricky, and this is why if you're a new player, don't don't be afraid to play slower and to read your cards carefully. And most of our community, this is one of the greatest gaming communities I've ever been a part of, which is another reason I'm making this video series, to help bring newer players into the fold and help you guys get going a little bit, hit the ground running, let's say. But they will always be willing to help talk you through things. Response windows are tricky, and there are a lot of them. And you will see some veteran players where they'll just be like, play card, no response. Response, no response, cool. Play this, response, no response, cool. And they'll just go quickly. But don't be afraid to ask your rival, your opponent, to take it a little bit slower to kind of allow you to walk through it. Because different response windows can lead to other response windows. So let's say you play an attack and you have no response, but your rival has a response to you playing an attack. Well, now let's say you have a response to their response. That opens up a separate window. And then if your rival has no response to your response, your ability would resolve. Sorry, I lost my word for a second. Then, unless their response was canceled, their ability would resolve, and we go back to the window of a card has been played. And then you can pass, and then your rival will pass. So basically, the window remains open until there are no more abilities that players wish to play during that window. So if you have several different foundations, like say Fateful Meeting, that would have a response when you would take damage, you don't have to pick and choose which one you use. That window opens, and you're allowed to individually play each response. But each one starts its own sub-window, if that makes sense. And then once that fully resolves, you can play another one, starting its own sub-window. Once that fully resolves and that window closes, you start the next one until you've resolved all of the responses that you wish to resolve in that window, and then that window closes. So unlike the chaining system in Yu-Gi-Oh!, where you can miss your timing, or you have to stack things a certain way, and if your opponent plays a response and you're not able to do this because it's a different response speed, you don't have to worry about that. You will be able to play whatever responses you wish to play during that window, as many as you need during that window's opening. So it's a little tricky to learn at first, which windows open and when, and how long the windows stay open. If you have 3 cards to use, which ones do you want to use at what point? But that all comes with practice. As with all things, you'll get better with practice, I promise. Just like with learning your checks and learning the math on blocks, learning when to use your enhances, it's all going to come down to practice. This is all a very broad strokes of breaking this down as simply as I can to help you guys hit the ground running. But with that is the basic overview of the different types of abilities that you'll find in our game. In future videos, I will break down each specific keyword ability, which falls under these subtypes, to help you expand your knowledge of what your cards are capable of. Until next time, class dismissed.